These are 7 of our most watched investigations, covering war, nuclear power, free speech, royal privilege, and political double standards. Different stories, but one question connects them all. Who holds power and who escapes accountability? Let's examine the evidence. Welcome to Hard-Hitting News 365. Let's get into it. Here, Piers Morgan asks Scott Horton a very direct question. If Iran is not allowed to have nuclear weapons, why does Israel get treated differently? And this matters because the issue is not whether Iran should have nukes, it should not. No more states should be joining the nuclear club. The issue is consistency. Israel is widely believed to have nuclear weapons, refuses to confirm or deny it, and is outside the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Iran, meanwhile, is inside the NPT but heavily scrutinized. So listen carefully here. Horton's argument is strong on the double standard, but we also need to check whether his legal claim is as simple as he makes it sound.
I've asked repeatedly Israeli guests, pro-Israeli guests, why is it that as we talk about Iran not being allowed to have a nuclear weapon, why is it that Israel is consistently allowed and given a pass to never say whether it has a nuclear weapon or not?
I know the answer to that question. It's illegal for America to give aid to Israel if they're a nuclear weapon state that has not signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty. So they lie.
That is a blunt way of putting it, but the underlying point is real. The U.S. and much of the West operate around Israel's nuclear ambiguity rather than confronting it directly. But the legal claim needs precision. The Symington and Glenn amendments are not just a simple automatic ban on aid to any non-NPT nuclear state. They depend on presidential determinations, nuclear transfers, safeguards, detonations, and political waivers. So Horton is right about the political double standard. But the law is more technical than the soundbite suggests.
And they give the strategic ambiguity and pretend they don't know that Israel is a nuclear weapon state. That way, conspiracy nothing. It's the Glenn Symington law. It says it's illegal to give them aid if they're a nuclear weapon state that does not sign the NPT.
The evidence-based verdict is this. Piers asks a fair question, and Horton is right to call out the double standard. Israel is widely believed to have nuclear weapons, is not in the NPT, and still receives exceptional U.S. political and military support. Iran should not have nuclear weapons. But that argument is weakened when the same powers ignore Israel's undeclared arsenal. The left will see hypocrisy and Western selective enforcement. The right will say Israel faces unique security threats and cannot be treated like Iran. Both points matter. But the objective truth is simple. Non-proliferation only has credibility when rules are applied consistently. The blind spot in Horton's answer is legal oversimplification. The blind spot in the pro-Israel argument is pretending ambiguity is not a loophole. So is this really about nuclear law? Or about which allies are allowed exceptions? Megyn Kelly is on with Piers Morgan reacting to Britain blocking Cenk Uygur and Hassan Piker from entering the UK. Now here is why this matters. Megyn is not defending their politics. She is defending the principle. Watch how she separates disagreement from censorship. Because that distinction is exactly what free speech depends on.
So I think this is hypocritical, it's outrageous, and of all times to be doing it, as we over here are celebrating our independence from you guys, more and more of your folks, including some of the folks shut down by that Oxford Union, are going to come to America. I'm actually in the talks right now to help host this thing, Piers, and I'm happy to host you and Cenk and all these other guys too, because this is, as we say over here, fucking bullshit. And needs to stop. The government should have absolutely no say over what the opinions are in your head.
This is the key line. Megyn's argument is not that every foreign speaker has an automatic right to enter Britain. They don't. The UK can refuse entry. But if the reason is political opinion rather than a clear public safety threat, then the government needs to be transparent. Otherwise, not conducive to the public good becomes a very polished way of saying, we do not like your views.
The opinions that you speak out of your mouth, what it should police is when you use those biases, if they exist, to actually hurt people.
Megyn Kelly makes the strongest free speech argument precisely because she is defending people outside her own political camp. The left will see the UK ban as censorship against pro-Palestinian or anti-Israel voices. The right may be divided. Some will defend border control, while others should recognize a dangerous precedent. The evidence-based verdict is this. Britain has the legal power to block entry, but legality does not automatically make it wise, fair, or democratic. If there was a genuine public order risk, the government should explain it clearly. If the issue was mainly controversial opinion, then Megyn is right. That is a free speech problem. The blind spot in Megyn's argument is that foreign entry is not the same as domestic speech rights, but the blind spot in the UK government's position is bigger. Vague bans create suspicion and make controversial figures look vindicated. So is this public safety or political censorship? Netanyahu is warning Trump not to let Turkey back into the F-35 program. On one level, this is about military security. Turkey was removed after buying Russia's S-400 system. But listen carefully, Netanyahu also says the regional balance depends on Israeli air superiority. That is the real argument inside this clip.
The thing I'd like to say, because we're on the verge of the president's going to Turkey, look, Turkey is a great country, but it's governed by a man who calls openly for the annihilation of Israel. He occupies half of Cyprus, a NATO country. He's threatening Greece, another NATO country. And he talks openly about conquering Jerusalem. His foreign minister, his number two, said that the Jewish state hasn't a place among humanity. Basically, it has to be wiped out. His interior minister, said he looks forward to be the governor of Jerusalem. Well, for a regime infected by the Muslim Brotherhood, an extreme movement that hates America and chants death to America from that side of the spectrum, I don't think they should be given F-35s or the engines for their fighter jets, because that'll upset the power balance in the Middle East.
That line matters. Netanyahu is not only saying Turkey may be risky, he is saying the Middle East balance should be protected through Israeli military superiority. Supporters will call that stability. Critics will call it American-backed regional dominance. Both readings matter.
Upset the power balance in the Middle East, which is ultimately guaranteed by Israeli air superiority, and also by, I think, by America's posture in the Middle East.
Netanyahu has a serious point on the F-35 issue. Turkey's purchase of Russia's S-400 created a real security dispute with Washington, so this is not just anti-Turkey politics. But listen to the wider framing. Netanyahu is not only saying protect NATO technology, he is also saying the Middle East balance depends on Israeli air superiority. Supporters will call that stability. Critics will call it American-backed dominance. The evidence-based view is this. Turkey getting F-35s raises legitimate security questions, but Netanyahu's argument is selective. He treats Turkey's power as dangerous, while treating Israel's superior power as automatically legitimate. So the real question is, should U.S. policy protect regional balance, or protect one country's military edge? If you value evidence over tribalism, subscribe to Hard-Hitting News 365. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one. Welcome to Hard-Hitting News 365. Let's get into it.
How you can claim at the moment that this war is not just dragging on exactly in the way that Donald Trump said he would always try and avoid. It's just becoming slowly a bit of a forever situation, because the Iranians are like, well, we can keep controlling the Strait of Hormuz and keep our enriched uranium buried away until the cows come home. And Trump doesn't want to get engaged again in military strikes, but Netanyahu does. Again, comes back to the Israeli element here of competing agendas. What do you think?
Piers is right to press this point. If Trump's promise was to avoid forever wars, then Iran cannot become another open-ended conflict with no clear legal basis, no defined endgame, and no honest debate about whose interests are being served. The left will see this as another failure of military escalation. The America First right will see it as foreign policy capture. The hawkish right will say Iran is dangerous and must be contained. But the evidence-based point is simple. Pressure is not a strategy unless you can explain the objective, the legal authority, and the exit plan. Iran is not innocent, but neither is endless escalation automatically justified. So the real question is this: is America defending itself here, or being pulled into someone else's war?
The UK-US special relationship was supposed to be an unbreakable military shield. But as America pivots to face new competitors, it is pulling resources away from Europe. Take the UK's nuclear submarine system, Trident. Britain calls this deterrent independent, but it's physically tethered to America. It relies entirely on US missile stockpiles and maintenance bases just to function. This deep integration is a massive hidden vulnerability. It only works if Washington and London share the exact same strategic priorities, and that is no longer guaranteed. The 2026 US National Defense Strategy officially downgrades Europe. It shifts America's primary military focus and heavy resources straight to the Indo-Pacific. This American pivot instantly stretches the UK-US defense tether to its breaking point. What used to be a protective shield is now a critical security risk. To survive, the UK must systematically sever its over-reliance on US infrastructure and forge a new independent defense network with its European neighbors. So what happens to the UK's Trident nuclear submarine system? Britain must now learn to maintain it without American support, or risk facing a dangerous new reality completely alone.
Can Iran simply shut down the Strait of Hormuz because it is at war with the United States? The answer is uncomfortable for both sides of this argument. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important waterways on Earth. Nearly 20% of global oil supply has historically flowed through this narrow passage. And now, commercial vessels are once again caught in the confrontation between Iran and the United States. Let's start with the argument sympathetic to Iran. Iran has faced military strikes, sanctions, and direct pressure from the United States and Israel. From Tehran's perspective, Washington cannot attack Iranian territory and then expect the wider region to continue operating as though nothing has happened. That argument explains Iran's anger. It does not legally justify attacking commercial shipping. The Strait of Hormuz is used for international navigation. The established principle of transit passage means countries cannot simply suspend access because doing so creates political leverage, and this is where some on the political left have a blind spot. Condemning American or Israeli military action does not require pretending every Iranian response is justified. Attacking unrelated commercial vessels is not resistance by default. But the political right has its own convenient omission. The United States repeatedly talks about freedom of navigation while using overwhelming military force and economic pressure to shape the region around its own strategic interests. You cannot demand respect for international rules only when those rules protect your shipping and your allies. So here is the evidence-based verdict. Iran does have legitimate grounds to challenge attacks on its territory through diplomacy, international institutions, and lawful self-defense where the legal threshold is met. But Iran does not gain a blank check to threaten civilian maritime trade or close an international passage used by states that are not attacking it. And America's previous actions do not magically make that lawful. The moral standard should be painfully simple. Do not attack civilian shipping. Do not treat international law as optional, and apply that rule to Iran, America, Israel, and everyone else. Because once international law becomes something only your enemies must follow, it is no longer law. It is simply power wearing a suit. So what do you think? Is Iran defending itself or punishing the world for a war it did not start?
Piers Morgan tells Megyn Kelly that Prince Harry's latest security and accommodation dispute proves the royal drama has gone too far. But listen carefully. He moves from contested reports about palace arrangements to personal insults, and then to a far bigger demand, stripping Harry and Meghan of their titles. Is that proportionate accountability or personal hostility dressed up as analysis?
Let me just guide you back across the pond to what is happening here, because it involves an old friend of yours and mine, Prince Harry, the rogue son, who is crash landing into the UK today. And there's this gigantic furore, as always, has erupted around the little entitled brat, where he and his father and Buckingham Palace have been at loggerheads, it seems, all week, where at the last minute, he demands security for all his family. They said, no, you can't have it. They've offered him a place at the palace to stay. And then eventually they say you can have it, but he takes so long to try and accept it that by the time he accepts it, they say the offer's been rescinded, it's too late, you had to say yes earlier. In other words, the usual train wreck Harry stuff. My view, and I've said this to you a lot before, is I just think if I'm King Charles, enough of this bullshit. Just strip them of the titles, Meghan and Harry, let them do their thing, stop the drama, the circus that applies to them everywhere they go, and just keep them away from us.
The right will sympathize with Piers. Harry stepped away from royal duties, publicly attacked the institution, and still retains a title derived from it. The left will argue that security concerns involving his wife and children deserve serious consideration, and that calling him an entitled brat substitutes ridicule for evidence. The evidence-based verdict is more measured. Reports indicate that an accommodation offer was withdrawn after disagreement over when it was accepted, but the competing accounts do not prove every detail of Piers's version. Harry is entitled to raise credible safety concerns. He is not automatically entitled to whatever protection or palace arrangements he demands. Stripping titles is also a constitutional decision, not a broadcaster's punishment for irritating behavior. Piers raises a legitimate question about privilege without public service, but his personal animosity weakens the case. Should non-working royals retain titles, or is this simply another media feud being sold as a constitutional crisis?
Subscribe to Hard Hitting News 365. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.